Thank you for coming. General program updates are where the department in general is still working on Executive Order 562, which is taking a lot of our time and energy. Waste and cleanup is not as involved in that, which is the thing Liz will be talking later about where we do want to go with rate changes. But keep in mind that the rest of the department is essentially obsessed with changing their regs or reviewing their regs. And we have the opportunity for a bigger breather. We are still hiring. So if you know of promising people who are looking for a job, are more entry-level positions for those who know our system, they're environmental analysts 2s and environmental engineers 2s and 3s. So we are looking for some people. We have a couple of positions, federally funded positions, working on Superfund sites and federal facilities that are out now that I know of, or will be out in the very near future. So I encourage you to send good people our way. Talk about TCE for a little while. I think that's it for general program updates. We're working on a lot of stuff, and now it's all blanking in my mind. Do you have any questions about what we're doing? Or how we're doing it? Other than stuff that is actually on the agenda. No? You guys doing well? Okay. Busy?
Thanks to the policies are really good.
To which policy?
Soil policy.
Soil policy, I believe that we are just signed another ACO for another facility in Dudley. That happened on Tuesday, I believe. So another option for helping locations fill holes in the ground so that they can be reused for better purposes, kind of different kinds of brownfields, and it may also help you with your soil management issues. So that's good. I think there are another couple in the pipeline as well, so there'll be some more alternatives, more options coming soon.
I was wondering if you talked to your colleagues in Connecticut, because Connecticut DEP staff says they have been approached by people looking to cross the border and make facilities in Connecticut similar soils facilities.
We haven't talked to them specifically. It would be good if they were doing similar things. You know, the more capacity, the more options there are, the better. I would think, and this is a great opportunity for people with quarries that need filling to fill it, to find soil.
The movement will spread.
It's a movement. I feel like I sound like Arlo Gunther. Yeah, so the soil stuff I think is going fairly well and manageable so far. Any other specific questions before we get into some of the finer detail? No? Okay, you're going to be a quiet crowd. Okay. So next up is TCE Sites. And as you know, we talked about last time, we're moving into the process of reviewing old TCE sites to evaluate and then first with a kind of desk evaluation, file review, and then for those sites that have a higher potential for perhaps lingering TCE issues, making contact with the property owners and beginning some process of more detailed site-specific evaluation, including potentially additional sampling. So what the staff has been doing is still reviewing these sites. There have been a handful of other sites that have come up, not kind of the older sites, but sites such as there was a school in, I'm going to confuse my M towns, Milford? Millis, thank you. The M towns really Millets, where the Central Region spent a lot of time over intense period over a couple weeks dealing with the potential for TCE, PCE in the indoor air. The additional evaluation eventually indicated that it was safe for the kids to go back to school, and in fact, it was hard to track down exactly what the initial results, the sources of that, and whether there was actually a source. But things like that, with the heightened sensitivity for TC, in particular, fluorinated compounds and vapor intrusion in general, each region pretty much has a handful of sites that they are working on. So they have not begun the process of calling up the older sites yet, and those are on the list. And well, it's not a list; it's on the list of priorities for us to do as we have the time and resources to do that. So we expect calls to go out to at least some of these sites in the very near future, but it depends upon, again, the resources and the evaluations of the site data that are in our files. Yes,
I'll just
Susan.
say again that I think from a public interest perspective, this should be a priority of the department, and I understand that the department might be short-staffed and have different priorities, but since we brought this up and it was decided it would be addressed, it's been months and we haven't gotten through the calling any older sites.
That all is true, and
Just for the record.
and for the record, the department is treating this as a priority.
Okay.
The Bureau is treating it as a priority.
Okay.
It's not a problem, but as you're aware, the Bureau and department has a number of priorities. And when, for example, when things come up like sampling in schools, revealing, at least indicating that there might be a problem, resources get diverted. Yes.
Have you decided whether you're going to be notifying the LFPs yet?
The question is, have we decided whether we will be notifying the LSPs yet? I think that will depend. That will be based on a site-by-site basis. Our first contact will be with the site owners, and then what we're going to see is a wide range of situations. Some of which we're going to recommend that they have an LSP, an environmental professional, working with them. Some of these sites are going to be very old, and the people that are currently living or working there have never had an LSP that they've purchased. So it's going to find a wide range of things. We are not just across the board going to contact the LSP of record that worked on the site, say 20 years ago, when they have no relationship with the current owners. So it will depend upon the particular site and where it is kind of in the process and how recently the work has been done and whether the current owner has a relationship with an LSP. But our first obligations are to them.
Do you know if the town or city will be notified?
The town or city will be notified as well, yes, and the Board of Health. We've been talking with the Department of Public Health, and we generally always work with the local boards of health. We're actually, this week and next week, meeting with Mass Health Officers Association's routine. We do this every year, but one of the topics that we're talking to them about is vapor intrusion trifluorescent. Yes?
Have there been any updates to how you're going to start out that conversation? I understand it's still case by case, but have you thought about maybe leaning towards indoor air sampling right off the bat? Have there been any updates in that discussion?
The question being whether we would go to indoor air sampling right off the bat versus perhaps soil gas sampling versus additional groundwater sampling. Again, I think our inclination, as we talked about last fall with the grad samples, that may be the quickest and easiest way to get a an indication whether there is a problem, but it's going to depend upon the particular situation.
Okay, and so.
So we're not trying to we're going to come in and we're going to sample in the indoor air in all cases. It will depend upon the situation. And I know this is not satisfying to hear, but I mean, you're all aware of how complicated the vapor intrusion site assessment process might be. Layering on top of that, how sensitive and complications the risk communication aspects of this will be. So I'm not guaranteeing that we have a blueprint for exactly how all of this is going to work out, and we are kind of, in some ways, you could describe it as playing it by ear, but we're trying to look at the site-specific details and try to identify how we can best figure out whether there's an ongoing problem or not. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not clear. If you contact an owner and they are working with an LSP, either the original LSP or they bring one support for on board. So is this going to be LSP led or departmental led, like for making decisions such as that?
It will depend. I think it will depend.
Oh,
Again, I mean that's the first quick answer.
That's actually a fair enough answer.
Our
circumstances.
Yeah, our goal is to have a path for each of these locations to, as in a timely manner, figure out whether there's an ongoing problem. And as Susan pointed out, DEP is short-staffed, so to the extent that we have confidence that the property owner kind of has a good grasp on what's going on, and the ideal situation is that there's a site that has residual TCE, a knowledgeable new owner has come in and purchased the property, and they in fact realize that even though this site had an RAO from 1997, there's some TCE, there's some concern about TCE, and ideally they bring in an LSP and do the additional work before we even call them. I mean, and we would be thrilled. And we have cases, at least one case where that has happened. There are others where we're going to come in and make contact, and the person may have some vague sense that this property had been a site once, but they were assured it was cleaned up and haven't given any thought to it for 10 years. And they don't know how the system works, they don't know who to contact, and they may be just as happy to have DEP come in and do some sampling to determine whether there's a problem or not, and then if there isn't, fine. And if there is a problem, then they deal with getting an LSP. So I think that probably represents the two extremes. And either way works for us.
On these sites where DEP will come in and do their own testing, to see if there's a problem or not, do they charge the owners of that work?
Good question. Does DEP charge the owners? We are doing this sampling in order to determine whether there's a public health issue and a risk issue, and that our concern is not who's paying. So I believe, check with Liz to make sure I'm saying this correctly. We are doing that sampling for free because it's a statutory obligation to follow up on and address potential imminent hazards, and we feel that that's part of DEP's role in this question of identifying whether there is a problem or not is part of what we can and should be doing. Now, if we do find a problem and something has to be done, then again, it's probably a complicated series of options about what happens. And in some cases, there may be past PRPs who may be doing work. There may be current owners who are doing work. There may be situations where DEP might have to do further remedial work and put in subslop systems. We're doing that now in some ongoing cases. So again, I think you're going to see the range.
How many sites into the process are you? it sounds like you just had somebody step up. I'm just curious, you mentioned there was about 100 sites last time. So
we have not called people yet for that. We have been dealing with existing, I would like to say to our credit, we're dealing with a number of trichloroethylene sites where we know that there are problems. And we have staff dedicated in working on those. And we have staff reviewing information to determine which are the ones that we should be following.
yeah, just it's not like you had a PRP who stepped up to the plate and
Yes.
jumped in. So
Yes, and that's part of, as things, so if you want, I don't count that as, we haven't called that person, they called us. They essentially re-notified and wanted to come in, and yes, we're working with them, and that's, yes, Michelle?
Oh, so going back to your earlier point, I'm assuming that someone's putting together a script in essence for the people who are gonna be making the calls. I hope that's the case anyway. So I'm wondering whether, with respect to the question about the sampling and who pays, is the department's intent to ask the current owners to do an evaluation? And only if those folks decline, will the department go in, or is it again site specific? Don't pick that just because I gave it a no.
I think option C, all of the above. Well, first, there is a general script. What we're doing is asking the deputy regional directors to make the calls so that there will be consistency and a consistent message. The details will be different, and that's one of the reasons why we want the DRDs to make the calls, because in any given situation, it's going to be different if you're dealing with homeowners that have no clue, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but are not familiar with the program, versus a commercial entity that may, in fact, be dealing with DEP on a number of different fronts, perhaps including waste site cleanup. And they're more sophisticated, and they have people for this. Looking back at when we did the PCE review, we came across a number of situations, including where we had offered to do the work, and the owners said, no, I'll have my LSP do the work. I mean, you will find people who would rather do the work than have us do the work. Yeah, I don't know. So I think many people don't view it as, oh, well, DEP is offering me work, I'll get this free round of samples. Free round of samples with every telephone call. But we are willing and able to do that preliminary work to identify whether there is a problem. And that's kind of the message, the main message that we're trying to give going in. And I talked about this with the MHOA folks on Tuesday, that the department's goal is to identify whether there's a problem and to kickstart the process of dealing with it. And our primary concern is not who did the work in the past or whether that RAO met the standards or not in the past, because frankly all of this is being driven by the standards change, and we now know something we didn't know before. And the question is, how does one react to that? Yes.
Just to go a little further with that last statement, although it is not the purpose of your your review to maybe identify deficiencies in the RAOs, have you, in your kind of thorough review of these to try to assess the TCE risk, determined in any cases that there were maybe other issues that would cause the department to think about whether those RAOs were in fact appropriate at the time?
First, let me say, I have not personally been doing the research. As we have discussed kind of the preliminary results for the reviews, we haven't gone through case by case. But what the directive has been is to look at what the site data that are in the files say about the potential current exposures. So I can't say that, you know, somewhere somebody didn't see something really, you know, glaring and obvious. But I'm fairly confident saying that one, that wasn't their directive to go looking for, these are maybe one way to say it, these are not audits. We're not auditing, we're looking kind of as quickly and as efficiently as possible for what were the site conditions that remained when the site was closed. And how do those site conditions, what does that tell us about the potential for current risk? So that was the mindset. I think that was the directive that was given. I can't promise you that in looking at these files, whether the ones we've already done or the ones that are still need to be reviewed, that something glaring and obvious and, you know, how do you say, not ignorable, it might come up, but that's the case with kind of any time somebody picks up a report.
Agreed. None that you know of at the moment.
And so far as I know, that nothing has moved forward kind of on an enforcement track rather than a kind of public health evaluate the financial exposure track. Again, not to say that if something came up that we would just ignore it because of that, but that's not the primary focus. Yes?
Just the calls I'm getting are at a much more basic level, which is how many calls have you made? Where are you on your schedule? When are you going to finish? You know, that's what people are really asking. Because I was under the impression at the last meeting that calls were being made immediately and you were rolling it out immediately.
Well, I believe last meeting, and we can check the video, we had we were identifying the sites that we'd start making calls. I think what we found was, one, that there were other sites that kind of took priority over that work, and I'm sorry, but that happened. And that the level of review that the staff felt was necessary digging into files was deeper, and they felt that before they started making the calls that a better understanding of the site conditions was warranted, and that we didn't want to make calls and then say, well, I don't know the answer to that question, or yeah, I'll get back to you. They wanted to have a better level of comfort before making those calls.
So the calls haven't started yet, or they have started, or where are we?
The calls have not. Nobody has made, as far as I know, nobody has made a call based upon that review yet. Yes.
The sites that are in environmental justice communities, for some time, and they're really on active PRPs, how are those going to be addressed?
The question is for sites that are in environmental justice areas where there are no active PRPs, and no active work being done, how will those be addressed? And I think that's one of kind of the competing factors in this, in that in some ways those aren't, it's a different universe of sites and an equally important universe, and I think that some of the sites that, because those would be considered kind of active, like the Tier 1D non-responder type of sites, those aren't in this we're going to review closed sites universe because those sites were never closed. But those are some of the types of sites that staff are working on, no less important than the closed sites. So it's not like we're ignoring TCE and potential exposures and waiting. So the staff have, they know about a lot of these sites, and part of their concern are about some of these sites that don't have a PRP, were never fully, we may have evaluated them years ago for potential imminent hazards, and I know that we have been doing some work on some of those kinds of sites. The Central Region is preparing for and about to do sampling for an old site that had been midnight dumping of TCE, no PRP. It was never closed, so it's not part of this initiative. But they're doing indoor air sampling and soil gas sampling along houses that might be potentially impacted by this. So it's that kind of work. So we're not, as we become aware of them, and if anybody that has sites that would be of potential concern for this, we would be more than willing, we would be eager to kind of add them for review and prioritize them for, how do they fall in the light of these.
How about sites that have a temporary solution that maybe the review isn't due for another 3 years?
For sites that have temporary solutions, where would they fall in this? Yes, they're included one way or another. If you view them as closed sites, then they're in there. Certainly as people are working on them, and again, there are a lot. I have to stop saying it's kind of site specific, but there are temporary solutions that are in that 5-year review, and not a lot going on in between. There are also temporary solutions where there are remedial actions being implemented and where there's more day-to-day operations that are going on. So those would be addressed somewhat differently. But the temporary solutions, particularly the ones that are on the 5-year review schedule, are kind of on our radar. Maybe that's the best way to say it. So we're not. One way of looking at it is, while we were working on the current sites and trying to figure out kind of the best way to approach this, and working on our contracting and our ability to do fast sampling and documenting that the grab samples are appropriate and give meaningful information, and purchasing the APUs so that we have them at our disposal and can put them in the field within hours. As we were doing all of that on live sites, we were holding back on the closed sites until we had that all figured out. I guess one way of looking at it is now that we are looking at the entire universe of TCE sites. The current active sites should be dealing with TCE as a potential current exposure, and everybody should be looking at those. Temporary solution sites, people should be reviewing them, because this goes beyond the question of eliminating all substantial hazards. This is potential imminent hazards. And the fact that it has a temporary solution doesn't change the fact that those exposures may be occurring. And we have a process which we're imminently implementing for a systematic review of those old sites. In fact, we've started the systematic review. We haven't started the field work for those. So I think that opens up the universe for trying to, in a systematic way, make sure that all sites that have TCE are being addressed. Yes?
All sites, so every site that's ever had TCE and may have been closed will somehow be notified of the current standards for TCE? I thought you were prioritizing, and as I sit and listen, I wonder if notification, we're getting too concerned, or the department's getting too concerned about priorities.
I'm going to stop, cut in, because no, I don't think I said that, and I certainly didn't mean that. What I said is all sites are potentially that have TCE are potentially impacted. What we're doing with the closed sites is looking at the site files, and we're ruling out a large number of sites that have conditions that are not likely to pose a problem now. And there's no reason to call them, there's no reason to notify them, there's no reason to bring them into the system. What we want to do is identify the sites that left behind appropriately high levels of TCE, where you're most typically in the groundwater, below the old GW2 standards, but at levels that now might be an indoor air problem. So it's a universe of significant levels of TCE in the environment. And if that describes an old site, then at some point we're probably going to make contact and look at it in more detail. But that also means that there are a lot of other sites that have TCE is a contaminative concern, where it's not going to rise to that level, or the site conditions are such that it's unlikely to pose a significant risk, or that when they did the evaluation, they actually looked at indoor air and have good measurements, and that we can rely upon that site data more so than kind of groundwater data, a couple migration pathways removed. So it's not, if you ever had any level of TCE at any point in the site investigation, you'll hear from us and get notification. There is a triage and an evaluation. And as I said before, we're hoping that at some point as we work through these sites, we will be able to identify conditions and circumstances and concentrations and media where we can say, we think we got them all. And
there's an awareness issue, though. I think there are owners out there that have sites that build buildings on brownfield sites that could have known 3 months ago, 4 months ago, 6 months ago that there's a change in the guidance, change in the standards that they could be addressing proactively on behalf of their tenants, their people that are at the site. It's a changed environment now, how we look at TCE. So I think there's a notification piece that people need to be aware of how we look at TCE today, and then make decisions about how they go forward. And DEP, by the way, will be in touch at some point if their evaluation suggests that you really do have a problem, you need to take action quickly. But I know there are owners out there right now that would go out, hire an LSP, or would go out themselves and start some indoor air monitoring tomorrow if they had the call today.
Well, that's something that we certainly have discussed internally, and we've discussed here at the advisory committee in the past about kind of blanket notifications to people. And part of the concern that was raised is that DEP, if we had a blanket notification, and it was recommended that we not do this, had a blanket notification, that it would create a lot more concern and fear and anxiety that then DEP would not be able to help address because of resources, and that it was better to try to identify the worst and the highest potential exposures and work on them as we have the opportunity. We have been talking about this, as Susan would point out, for quite a while. And if there are, in fact, LSPs that have concerns about particular sites with their clients and they have a relationship, then there's nothing to stop anybody from raising that issue and dealing with it, as at least one site came in and notified for it because they wanted to deal with it. And they knew it was a potential problem, and they weren't going to wait for us to come around, and that's great.
Well, I just think of the statutory obligation that an owner has, a current owner, to identify an imminent hazard, to address an imminent hazard. Sometimes we get too tied up in how old is the site, who are the previous property owners. What's relevant is today's condition.
Janine?
To the gentleman's point, I think one thing you might consider is putting some sort of official statement on your website that LSPs who are making calls to those property owners might refer to, because we have had several situations where people have said, okay, well, what is it, show me where DEP is doing this. And the only place we can really point them to is, like you did an article in the paper last month, I think. I don't remember. You did an interview, so we pointed them to that. But I think if you had, and I understand that the timing and all the sensitivities and all that, but if there was something official maybe on the website saying that DEP is conducting a review, at least then the LSP could point to that and say, you may be in this group, you might think about doing some work. So thought.
Okay, so let me just restate that. So the suggestion is, and we can probably, I'm looking at Liz to see if, I think that we can probably do something like that. Okay. I need comfort in having somebody agree. I know.
But it's just a statement of fact. It's
Right,
not saying
yes.
what the criteria
Yes.
what Jim
And-
is talking about, I think I support that.
Yes, okay, then we can do that maybe by the end of this week. Okay, Ned, your presentation.
My impression is that, and I have had experience with clients calling and saying, we're saying that, but I don't think it's necessary because relevant information is out on the website under the TCE. There it is, and run the numbers and know whether we have a problem or not.
Ned points out that the information is out there and you don't necessarily need to have DEP say that this is what we're going to do because the information is there for people who are kind of willing to look or who routinely look at the website. I mean, I think there are a lot of PRPs out there who just don't follow what we're doing because they think they're done. And those are going to be the ones who are most problematic. The people that you have ongoing relationships with, either because you are representing the PRP themselves or you are your clients with PRPs, more likely for most of you, those are the people that you're having a conversation. I hope you're having this conversation with them, or may have this conversation with them. And to the extent that somebody is, as Jean said, you may run across some clients who want to be have something that you can point to say this is what DEP is doing before they'll take action. There may be people out there like that. There may be clients like that. There may be clients who don't need that, who base need for additional work on your recommendations or your interpretations of that. Either way, it works for me. If it will help address the issue, then I think a statement like that certainly wouldn't hurt, and it could only.
How many people are subscribed to that, the regulatory change update that they get the email blast?
The question is, how many people are subscribed to the regulatory email blast update? We have a couple of them in the department, so there is one main one, kind of the official regulatory email blast thing, which is for all programs, for all, and I have no idea how many people are on it, but there are a lot.
That might be an avenue
Yeah.
if they make a statement, because you're going to get in line.
Yeah, that would certainly be broader than the wayside cleanup mailing list, which is when you hear from me or Liz, that's from our smaller, but still, many hundreds, yes.
I think our wayside cleanup is primarily LSP.
Right, that is more consulting. Certainly there are some PRPs on there, the ones who are, do a lot of business with us. But I think a lot of people that we're trying to reach in this are, sites where they were one-offs. The owners have no other sites. They don't have ongoing relationships with LSPs or PRP or DEP. But we can look at that. My only thought about that is that wayside cleanup doesn't control that, and I think that they do try to be very clear in kind of what are appropriate uses for that email list, and not so that people sign up for information about regulations, not about kind of every initiative, every program is doing. So there may be some reluctance about putting it, but we'll ask.
In a way, it's news about regulations because it is in response to a regulation change. And a lot of developers might be subscribed to something like that because they have broader interest in all of the regulations. That would be a good avenue to inform them.
We'll certainly ask. I just want to put out, if you don't see it, I think that if you have signed up for that, you're probably getting a lot of emails about the EO 562 changes, or if you haven't yet, you will in the very near future. So I think there may be some sensitivity about that, but we'll ask and find out. And even getting the commissioner to tweet about it. They're always looking for tweets. You think tweets should be cheery things? Oh, look at what DEP is doing at this meeting.
Ask Donald about cheering.
Not going to go there. Yes.
I was just wondering how you're prioritizing sites that might have high level of TCE in the groundwater, but they don't have buildings yet on the site, but they might have buildings in the future.
The question is how would we prioritize sites that have high levels of TCE in the groundwater, but no buildings in the area, but might in the future. So for the purposes of this exercise, that would be a very low priority. What we're trying to do is identify situations where people may be at risk in the short term. Okay, yes?
When you go out and test, can you skip ahead and just look for TCE? Or are you gonna, is DEP gonna require the whole TO15 suite?
I don't know the answer to that offhand. My quick answer is, when we do the work, we don't limit it to that one chemical. If we go ahead and do a grab sample, they're going to look at other peaks that are coming off it. But our focus is on TCE. A lot of these sites, again, generalizing, a lot of these sites, your TCE is the main contaminative concern. Otherwise, it's not going to kind of be prioritized on the list, and that's going to be the focus. I can get a better answer for you later. Okay. Yeah. But I hope to have be able to report more progress, but be assured that we have a number of TCE sites that we are in fact working on, and there will be no lack of sites going into the future.